Is ADHD self-diagnosis a trend? In part, yes, it does look like a trend, and some people may be incorrect in their assumptions. But there are also probably a lot of people who do meet clinical criteria and are not diagnosed. Most people who are adults today grew up in an era where ADHD diagnoses were not that common. Especially if you were a girl and/or did okay at school. I know several people who were diagnosed as adults. I think the same is true of other conditions like autism and dyslexia. I know adults who certainly would meet the criteria for a referral if they were at school today, but didn't get a referral for whatever reason as children. They have reason to suspect that they might have these conditions, though they shouldn't claim that they do have them. People who suspect they have a condition should probably get tested by a professional. But that can be a major task with waiting lists and fees. So I think that leaves some people stuck in the maybe category. Some people also don't see the tangible benefits of official diagnosis due to the limited help available for adults. ADHD is absolutely 100% real. It requires professional diagnosis, but many people who need treatment start with self-diagnosis. I did. Being diagnosed as an adult was, for me, and I cannot overstress this enough, life-changing. ADHD is caused by a malformation in the brain. It is thinner than average, leading to issues which greatly impact one's ability to function in daily life. It is largely genetic. It exists from birth. It does not go away. It is very difficult to manage, since it impacts one's ability to focus and remember and establish habits. But it is tremendously responsive to medication. ADHD is expressed as a collection of issues with time awareness, emotional regulation, especially around frustration, rejection sensitivity, attention control, both inability to pay attention and inability to stop fixating, future planning, and more. A large number of these skills are collectively referred to as executive functions. There are a lot of variation in individual executive function strengths and weaknesses. Lots of reasons someone may be poor in one or more of them. There are 3 types. Hyperactive, the classic, popular presentation with difficulty to sit still or maintain focus or keep on task. Inattentive, less physical manifestation, difficult to stay on task. Time awareness, and combined, evidence of both types. Many people can have what they would think are difficulties in these areas. And they do, but not to the clinical level and not caused by the same physical issues in brain structure as ADHD. Another major point of ADHD is that it results in a different response to the medication treatment. 7,080% of diagnosed patients see marked and immediate reduction in symptoms when taking one of the 2 stimulant drug families, such as Adderall or Ritalin, though there are other brands. It is not well understood why some people respond to one family but not the other. Those who do not have ADHD and take Adderall experience the amphetamine high and sense of euphoria, not seen by those who do have ADHD. People with ADHD absolutely exist without knowing they have it. They think they are just lazy or depressed or useless or lack motivation or are flighty or cannot be happy or stupid or otherwise not good enough to function like everyone else. It has a depressingly high coincidence with depression, anxiety, and OCD disorders. About 50%. The rates of job loss, incomplete education, economic hardship, divorce, depression, suicide, obesity, and other areas, wherever time awareness, attention to detail, follow-through, memory, and habit are expected of the average person, is many times higher among those with ADHD. Imagine you have bad eyesight because of a malformed cornea. You have always had this. You've always had problems seeing far away but not up close. So you naturally construct your life to focus as much as possible on things which need up close attention. You don't learn to drive. You don't play sports. You gravitate to computers. You learn to cover up your inability to read signs and lie about not liking movies to avoid going to the theater. You struggle through life like this. Going places takes longer because you miss turns. Relationships fail because you always have to rely on them to drive you places. School and work are harder. You are just as smart as anyone else. Your close vision is great and it lets you see things others miss. But that's lost among the difficulty of just living life and wondering why others don't have problems you do. Then one day a friend who realizes you can't see well, a psychologist you are seeing for the depression, a manager who convinces you a driver's license would be good for your career, gets you to go to an eye doctor. They do tests and give you some glasses to try. Holy shit, are those birds? You can see things close and far away. You weren't just dumb or lazy. You just had bad corneas which modern medicine can fix. All self-diagnosis has been a trend lately. Self-research and advocate all you want. But until you have that unbiased diagnosis by a professional, don't claim to have a disorder. Mental illness has been romanticized to all hell lately. People think it's cool, trendy, enjoy the sympathy or benefits. I've been professionally diagnosed before it was cool. And I promise you, having ADHD among other disorders isn't fun, guys. Forgetting where you put your keys or getting hyper occasionally isn't ADHD. I hate that people think ADHD is about being messy and then diagnose themselves based on being a slob. Some people try to make it seem like it makes you cute and quirky. It's much more than that, and doesn't feel cute at all. A point to add: I found out I had ADHD largely because of TikTok and Reddit. It was a weird process and took forever, but I got an Adderall prescription and I have never had something improve my quality of life more than that. Self-diagnosis is an issue before TikTok. Until a doctor or specific medical tests say you have a condition, you don't have that condition. Just symptoms that may be related. Stupidly, a lot of people seem to claim to have ADHD, be on the spectrum, have Tourette's, or other conditions to get the sympathy, internet fame, or to falsely get disability benefits. Malinger. Pathetic. I suspect two things are happening. One is that we absolutely sucked at diagnosing ADHD before the 2010s. And to some extent still do. Particularly in girls and kids that didn't have behavioral issues in school. Those misdiagnosed kids often got a depression, anxiety diagnosis as teens, but depression, anxiety meds didn't really cut it. They then learned that ADHD is a lot more complicated than the fidgety kid who goofs off in class stereotype, and realize they actually have a lot of symptoms that fit with ADHD. It happens a lot when women become mothers. ADHD is genetic, so their child gets a diagnosis. The mother learns what ADHD is and realize they actually have a lot of the same symptoms and they're just as severe. The other thing happening is people not recognizing the difference between a symptom and a trait. People with ADHD aren't separate humans with distinct behaviors. They're people who deal with the same things as non-ADHD people, but to the point where it's a mental health issue severely hampering life. For instance, everyone loses things. People with ADHD spend almost every day looking for the things they've lost, to the point where it causes distress and interferes with their life. That's the difference between, "Oh, I do that too," and symptom of a mental health illness. Mixed bag. It's definitely easy to see traits of ADHD. I guess it depends on if they are doing research besides just one TikTok. There definitely has been horror stories of fake diagnoses for attention, but equally there are Number of self-diagnoses that are legitimate. In Ireland, where I'm from, ADHD is often diagnosed at a young age, but if it's not, it costs a lot of money or time on a public waiting list to get it done. In a lot of cases, the time or money isn't worth it for a lot of people. The closure is nice, but if you aren't getting it some sort of other benefit, it's hard to justify getting the diagnosis done late in life. I 100% agree with this. As a person that grew up with ADHD and had Ritalin thrown at me since I was little, it's a disservice. I am still trying to figure out how to treat my adult ADHD, and people try to commiserate with me when they just can't focus at work. ADHD is so much more, and it's hard to get real answers when everyone has it now. I think a common issue with self-diagnosis is that things like ADHD have a really wide range of symptoms and severities, and it's kinda like, if you know, you know. Many symptom quizzes don't really give the full picture of what to expect. I don't think all self-diagnosis is wrong, especially in the US, where getting a diagnosis can be incredibly expensive and time-consuming. But sometimes you do actually know. Everything is there, just not the official diagnosis. What complicates this phenomena is that mental disorders are not binary like viruses or cancers. They are a confluence of symptoms, each of which exist on a spectrum. For example, if you perceive yourself as being above the mean on hyperactivity, hyperfocus, and forgetfulness, you might use the term ADHD as a shorthand. It is just much easier to use this shorthand than to list all of the individual traits which you feel you are above average on. In practice, ADHD is a disorder such that it requires both being above the mean on the associated spectrums and that these characteristics are maladaptive. It is the negative impact on your life that separates a disorder from a personality trait. Where it becomes problematic is when you begin to demand accommodation for personality traits that do not arise to a disorder, taking resources from those for whom these traits have a serious impact on their life. I would argue a self-diagnosis is only valid as a first step to seeking a professional diagnosis. Acknowledging a problem exists is naturally the first step to solving or managing it. It took my entire college career of wrestling with myself on whether or not I actually needed help to get said help. Boy, would getting a diagnosis early in college have saved me so much pain, self-loathing, and heartache in school. Using a self-diagnosis as a shield for bad behavior with no professional diagnosis on the other hand is just jumping on a fad, in my opinion. It's not quirky or fun, and treating the problem should be the main focus, not earning sympathy points. I assume this is from a combination of three things. 1. Mental health is being more openly talked about among the generation who uses social media the most. 2. Many Americans can't afford to get a diagnosis for any disorder, or generally won't see the cost as worthwhile unless they're extremely debilitated. 3. People's mental health in general is declining due to more people than ever spending most of their day home alone in front of a computer, on their phones. These lonely people probably just yearn for some type of community and find it with groups of people who have whatever disorder they self-diagnosed with. I doubt many people who are totally healthy and well-functioning are the ones who are self-diagnosing with any kind of disorder and finding some sort of label and online safe space with people who have similar symptoms, regardless of what is causing these issues, is probably comforting. I doubt this is some sort of insidious power play to get more followers or whatever else people claim the motive is in most cases. This is probably annoying to people with formal diagnosis, but I don't see it causing any material harm. But who knows? I have massive issues with the way these disorders are diagnosed and pathologized. I'm diagnosed as autistic and I've been referred for an ADHD assessment. I was surprised by the ADHD one and in denial about the autism for years. I don't invalidate self-identification with neurotypes like ADHD and autism. There's just so many issues in the way the world thinks of and characterizes neurodivergence. I simply don't agree with the medical model. And yes, I do have experience of having a child who those who subscribe to the medical model would call severely autistic. Yes, it is a trend. Yes, it's a trend. ADHD is not uncommon, but you need a professional evaluation to determine if you have it. Self-diagnosing ADHD from something you saw on social media is not a valid diagnosis. There are many symptoms that overlap with other conditions and can be exhibited in people who don't have ADHD, which is why you need a professional to evaluate you as they have the training and experience to distinguish between different disorders and normal behavior. Self-diagnosing with ADHD and any other mental health issue is just looking for attention. Self-diagnose is not valid. Absolutely. Especially since Hollywood had been turning mental divergence into superpowers lately. Looking at you, kid from Predator 2016. A HOD, AD, OCD, anything on the spectrum. People think it makes them cool and unique, or use it for sympathy. Meanwhile, humans who do struggle with one or more of those issues are just treated as weird. As someone who was professionally diagnosed in childhood in the 90s, we've come a long way as a society to help those who also suffer from ADHD. To answer your question, I'm going to say that self-diagnosing is and isn't a trend. Here's why. In my mind, the internet, and especially social media, has been able to reach groups of people that might not have otherwise known about it. If you watch a video and say to yourself, "This is hitting too close to home," talk to a medical professional about it. They might be able to springboard you to better research and better specialized help. Especially women. Since most of us show an inattentive or combined subtype, we're not bouncing off the walls physically, but mentally we have no focus. Now that the knowledge and words around this learning disability have become common, I think a lot of older individuals are finding names to what they've suffered with all along. They now have access to medical professionals that they wouldn't have had when they were younger. Younger individuals in the workforce now have the money to go to a GP and discuss it with them. I'm all for the late diagnosed crowd. And I think that self-diagnosis helps find common ground and terms for both the individual and a medical professional. What irks me is when others say, "Oh, I'm distracted all the time," or, "I lose my keys too. We're so ADHD." No. What you have is a short attention span and being forgetful. If these traits don't become detrimental for you, then you either have mild symptoms, which are totally valid and should be treated, or you're using ADHD and other comorbidities like anxiety, depression, OCD, OD, a myriad of lexias, for clout. And that's not fair. That's rude and inappropriate in mind. Having ADHD is not a fun thing. It's not fun when you set your mind to change a habit and fall off just as quickly into old ways. It's not fun when you put off menial chores that then pile up week after week. And then you get so overwhelmed you freeze and ignore the work that needs to be done. It's not fun when intellectually you know you need to sit down and put in a solid effort at work, just to self-sabotage and put your job on the line because your executive dysfunction is like, "Nah, the dopamine's this way," and you don't catch it until it's too late. It's not fun. I wish I could swap my brain out for a neurotypical brain. Or, as much of one as there is. No brain is typical. Some days because I want to function. That's all I want to do. I'm all for self-diagnosis. But you have to follow through and talk to a doctor about it. If you're using it for clout, then I want nothing to do with you. I wouldn't call it a trend. As long as I can remember, people have been self-diagnosing ADD, ADHD, OCD, bipolar, and probably other things. I'm sure some are correct, but I think most ignorant the seriousness of what they're saying.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epic Aaarealcast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.